Maya Trent adjusted her tool belt as she stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming deck of Obsidian Reach. The interplanetary trading station sprawled before her, like a mechanical constellation, its corridors buzzing with the chatter of dozens of alien species. Crystalline gel scientists clicked past in their environmental suits, their translucent bodies refracting the station's artificial light. Towering Vorthon merchants haggled with insectoid Crix traders over cargo manifests displayed on holographic terminals. In the distance, she could see the sleek vessels of the Geralt Corporation docked at the premium berths, their black hulls gleaming like predatory beetles. Maya was no stranger to Obsidian Reach. As an independent archaeological engineer, she'd made dozens of trips here over the past 5 years, trading salvaged technology and ancient artifacts for credits and supplies. But this time was different. Tucked securely in her reinforced carrying case was something that could change everything, if she was right about what it was. The year was 3025, and humanity had spent the last 3 centuries clawing its way back from what historians called the Great Collapse. Once, humans had been equals among the stars, members of a vast interstellar community. But something had happened 700 years ago. Wars, plague, or perhaps simply the inevitable entropy of civilization. Human records from that era were spotty at best, leaving archaeologists like Maya to piece together fragments of their species' former glory. She made her way through the station's commercial district, dodging hovering cargo drones and stepping around puddles of various alien lubricants that leaked from the less well-maintained ships. The air recyclers worked overtime to process the mix of atmospheres required by the station's diverse population, creating a faint, metallic taste that Maya had learned to ignore years ago. Her destination was the Meridian Exchange, a neutral zone where anyone could buy, sell, or trade, without the heavy taxation imposed by the major trading corporations. It was also where she'd received the encrypted message that had brought her here. The message had been brief. Have job. Real archaeology, not scrap hunting. Meet Docking Bay 47. Come alone. It was signed with a symbol she recognized. The mark of the Titan Institute, a secretive organization rumored to fund expeditions into humanity's lost history. Maya found Docking Bay 47 easily enough. It was one of the smaller berths, its owner's name listed simply as T Holdings on the directory. She approached the entrance cautiously, her hand resting on the plasma cutter at her hip. In her line of work, paranoia was a survival skill. The bay doors hissed open as she approached, revealing a modest cargo ship of human design. Standing beside the boarding ramp was a tall, lean man with silver hair and the kind of cybernetic eye implant common among military veterans. He wore a simple gray uniform without insignia, but Maya recognized the way he carried himself. Ex-military, probably high-ranking. Maya Trent, he said, not a question. I'm Cale Vorn. Thank you for coming. Maya studied him carefully. Cale Vorn. I know that name. You were a general in the Tarko Defense Force before the withdrawal. Cale nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. You've done your homework. Yes, I commanded the Third Fleet until our government decided it was time to pull back from interstellar affairs. His expression darkened slightly. That was 10 years ago. Now I work for parties interested in expanding humanity's horizons once again. The Titan Institute, Maya said. It wasn't a question. Among others. But let's discuss business inside where we have more privacy. Maya followed him up the ramp into the ship's cargo hold. The interior was Spartanly functional, but well-maintained with modification ports that suggested the vessel had been retrofitted for exploration rather than transport. Kyle led her to a small briefing room where holographic displays showed star charts and archaeological survey data. What do you know about the Titan artifacts? Kale asked without preamble. Maya frowned. Ancient human technology, supposedly. Most scholars think they're myths. Stories told to make us feel better about our diminished status in galactic society. Most scholars haven't seen this. Kyle activated a hologram that showed what appeared to be a metallic cube, roughly the size of a human head. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as Maya watched. This was recovered from a derelict ship in the asteroid belt 3 months ago. The ship was human in design, but far older than anything in our current historical records. Maya leaned forward, her archaeologist instincts immediately engaged. How old? Initial dating suggests around 700 years. The ship was hidden in a hollowed-out asteroid shielded from standard sensors. It took our survey team 6 weeks to crack the containment field around it. And you want me to study it? I want you to find out where it came from. The cube isn't just an artifact, it's a key. We believe it points to something much larger, something that could prove humanity once held a position of power among the galactic community. Maya sat back considering. What makes you think I can succeed where others have failed? Because you're the only archaeologist who successfully reverse-engineered 3 separate pieces of old tech. And because you're not afraid to get your hands dirty in hostile territory. Kale's cybernetic eye whirred as he focused on her. The cube is currently being examined by scientists at the Zentar research station. They've concluded it's worthless. Primitive metalwork, probably decorative. They're planning to dismantle it for scrap. Zentar is a Geralt Corporation facility, Maya said, understanding beginning to dawn. They wouldn't be interested in anything that might challenge their technological supremacy. Exactly. Which is why we need to retrieve it before they destroy it. The job pays 500,000 credits plus any additional artifacts you recover. Maya whistled low. That was more money than she typically saw in 2 years. But retrieval jobs from Geralt facilities were dangerous. The corporation had a shoot-first policy when it came to industrial espionage. There's more, Kale continued. Our intelligence suggests the cube may be connected to other artifacts scattered throughout this sector. If we're right, this could be the beginning of uncovering humanity's true legacy among the stars. Maya was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, she looked up at Kale. You mentioned the cube is being examined by scientists. What kind of scientists? Gel researchers primarily. Dr. Nera Voss is leading the team. Kale's expression soured slightly. She's brilliant, I'll give her that. But like most of her species, she considers human technology to be quaint. Maya nodded. She'd encountered gel scientists before. Their crystalline biology allowed them to interface directly with many forms of technology, giving them abilities that organic species like humans could only dream of. It also made them incredibly arrogant when it came to primitive tech. All right, Maya said finally. I'll take the job, but I work alone and I do this my way. Agreed. But you won't be entirely alone. Kyle gestured, and a section of the briefing room's wall slid aside to reveal a compact armory. The ship is at your disposal, along with whatever equipment you need. And Maya. He fixed her with a serious look. If you're right about what that cube represents, this could be about more than money. This could be about restoring humanity's place in the galaxy. 2 days later, Maya's ship, which Kale had registered under the false name Prospector's Dream, dropped out of hyperspace near the Zentar research station. The facility was a massive structure, orbiting a dead planet in the outer edge of the system, its multiple habitat rings spinning slowly to provide artificial gravity. Dozens of ships were docked at its external ports, from sleek Geralt research vessels to the more utilitarian craft of independent contractors. Maya had spent the journey studying the station's layout and security protocols. As a corporate research facility, Zentar was heavily defended, but it also needed to maintain the appearance of legitimate scientific inquiry. That meant visitors, provided they had the right credentials, which, thanks to Kale's connections, Maya now did. She piloted her ship to one of the public berths and went through the standard decontamination procedures. Her cover story was simple. She was a materials engineer, interested in studying exotic metal compositions. It wasn't entirely false. She did have degrees in materials science and archaeology, though she'd omitted the part about planning to steal their most interesting specimen. The station's interior was as sterile and gleaming as she'd expected from a Geralt facility. Humans made up perhaps 10% of the station's population, most of them in menial positions. Janitors, cargo handlers, technicians. The real work was done by aliens, gel scientists, who could interface with computers directly, Vorthan engineers, whose massive size allowed them to manipulate heavy machinery with ease, and Crick's researchers whose compound eyes could perceive electromagnetic spectra, invisible to most other species. Maya made her way to the Materials Sciences Division following the route she'd memorized from the station schematics. Along the way, she observed the casual dismissal with which the alien staff treated the human workers. It was nothing overt, no outright hostility. But there was a clear hierarchy, and humans were firmly at the bottom. She found the lab she was looking for on level 15. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see several gel scientists clustered around workstations, their translucent forms pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Maya knew indicated intense concentration. And there, on a pedestal in the center of the room, was the cube. It was smaller than she'd expected, and from this distance, it looked disappointingly ordinary. Just a metal cube with some etched patterns, unremarkable enough that she might have passed it by in a junk dealer's shop. But there was something about the way the light hit its surface that seemed wrong, somehow. The reflections didn't quite match what she'd expect from conventional metals. Maya made her way to the lab's entrance, where a human technician sat behind a reception desk, looking bored. His name tag read Jim Morrison. Probably not his real name, Maya suspected. Many humans working in alien facilities adopted simple, pronounceable pseudonyms. "Hi," Maya said, offering her most diplomatic smile. "I'm Saracen Materials Engineer from the Independent Researchers Collective. I'd like to speak with Dr. Voss about possibly collaborating on some metallurgical studies." Jim looked up from his tablet with the weary expression of someone who dealt with too many visitors. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm only on station for a day. I was hoping Dr. Voss might have a few minutes to spare." Jim sighed and tapped his tablet. "Let me check her schedule." After a moment, he looked up again. "She's in the middle of an analysis, but she might have time in about an hour. You're welcome to wait in the observation area." Maya thanked him and made her way to the small viewing area adjacent to the main lab. From here, she had a perfect view of the cube and the scientists studying it. Through the lab's speakers, she could hear their conversation. "The metallic composition is fascinating in a primitive sort of way," one of the gel scientists was saying. Maya recognized the distorted voice. Their translation devices never quite captured the harmonic undertones of gel speech. "Iron, titanium, trace amounts of platinum. Nothing we haven't seen before, but the alloy synthesis is crude." Another gel scientist, this one, wearing the insignia of a senior researcher, pulsed with what Maya recognized as amused colors. This had to be Dr. Voss. Crude but effective in its way, the humans of that era were clearly making do with limited resources. What's interesting is the precision of the surface etching. It suggests they had some understanding of nanotechnology, even if they couldn't implement it properly. Maya gritted her teeth. The casual condescension in Voss's tone was infuriating, but she forced herself to remain calm. Getting angry wouldn't help her mission. Still, another scientist chimed in. "It's essentially worthless as anything but a historical curiosity. The patterns are decorative at best. Shall we proceed with the disassembly?" "In a moment," Voss replied. "I want to run a few more scans first. There's something about the electromagnetic signature that seems anomalous." Maya watched as Voss extended her crystalline appendages toward the cube. Like all gel, she could interface directly with electronic systems through bioelectric fields. Her hands hovered just above the cube's surface, and Maya could see patterns of light racing through her translucent body as she attempted to probe the artifact. Suddenly, Voss jerked her hands back, her form flashing with colors Maya had never seen before. Sharp, almost hostile hues that spoke of alarm and confusion. "That's unusual," Voss muttered. There seems to be some kind of passive resistance to bioelectric scanning, as if the metal itself is designed to block our natural abilities. Maya's pulse quickened. If the cube was specifically designed to resist gel technology, that suggested its creators had known about gel capabilities. But humans hadn't had significant contact with the gel until 200 years ago, according to official histories. The observation period continued for another hour, with the gel scientists running various tests on the cube. Each scan revealed nothing but the same primitive metal alloy and decorative etchings. Maya could see their interest waning. Soon, they would indeed proceed with disassembly. "Dr. Voss," Jim's voice came through the intercom. "There's a human engineer here who'd like to speak with you. Sarah Chen from the IRC." Voss's form rippled with what Maya interpreted as mild irritation. "Very well. Send her in. But I only have a few minutes." Maya entered the lab trying to project an air of professional curiosity, while her eyes remained fixed on the cube. Up close, she could see that the surface patterns were even more intricate than the holographic images had suggested. They seemed to shift slightly as she looked at them, an optical illusion created by the interaction of light with microscopic surface variations. "Dr. Voss," Maya said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting that most aliens had learned to tolerate. "Thank you for taking the time to see me." Voss's response was a polite but distant harmonic tone that the translators rendered as, "Ms. Chen, Jim mentioned you're interested in metallurgical collaboration. I'm afraid we're quite busy with our current projects." "I can see that," Maya replied, gesturing toward the cube. "That's a fascinating piece. Pre-collapse human work, if I'm not mistaken." "Yes, though of limited technical interest. The alloy work is adequate for its era, but the design shows a fundamental misunderstanding of advanced material science." Voss's coloration shifted to what Maya recognized as academic superiority. "Still, it has some historical value, I suppose." Maya moved closer to the cube, pretending to examine it with the eye of a material specialist. "The surface patterning is remarkable for its precision. Have you considered that it might serve a functional purpose, rather than just decorative?" "We've run comprehensive scans," another gel scientist interjected. "The patterns are etched to a depth of exactly 0.3 millimeters across the entire surface. Precise, yes, but ultimately purposeless. Human aesthetics of that era favored complex geometric designs." Maya nodded thoughtfully, then looked back at Voss. "Would it be possible for me to take some detailed photographs for my research?" "I suppose there's no harm in that," Voss replied, after a moment's consideration. "Though I should warn you, we'll be disassembling it tomorrow for more thorough analysis." "Disassembling." Maya tried to keep the alarm out of her voice. "That seems like it would destroy any historical value." "Historical value is secondary to scientific understanding," Voss stated firmly. "And we've learned all we can from external examination." Maya spent the next 20 minutes photographing the cube from every angle, using a high-resolution scanner built into her engineering toolkit. All the while, she was calculating. The lab's security seemed focused on keeping people out rather than in. There were motion sensors and access controls on the entrances, but the lab itself was surprisingly open. The cube sat on a simple pedestal, with no force fields or additional protection. It would be almost insultingly easy to steal, if not for the station's external security. Getting the cube would be simple. Getting off the station with it would be the challenge. As she finished her documentation, Maya made a decision. "Dr. Voss, would it be possible for me to observe the disassembly tomorrow? I'm particularly interested in seeing the internal structure." Voss considered this. "I suppose one observer wouldn't be disruptive. The process begins at 800 station time." "Perfect, I'll be here." Maya left the lab with her scanner full of detailed images and her mind racing with possibilities. She had less than 18 hours to formulate a plan, and every minute counted. Back in her ship, Maya spread holographic displays across her cabin's small table. The images of the cube filled the space around her, rotating slowly as she studied every detail. There was something about the patterns that nagged at her, a familiar quality she couldn't quite place. She enhanced the resolution, focusing on the intersection points where the etched lines met. There was a regularity to them that went beyond mere aesthetics. In fact, if she overlaid a mathematical grid on the pattern, Maya's breath caught. The pattern wasn't random decoration. It was a coordinate system, a star map. She quickly ran the pattern through her ship's navigation computer, cross-referencing it with known stellar cartography. Most of the points didn't match any current star charts, but that wasn't surprising, given 7 centuries of stellar drift. But there were 3 points that aligned perfectly with current galactic landmarks: the Sanctuary Nebula, the Cephalian binary system, and the Dead Zone, where faster-than-light travel was impossible due to gravitational anomalies. Using these reference points, Maya began to extrapolate the location of the other coordinates. What she found made her hands shake. If her calculations were correct, the cube contained the locations of at least 30 star systems. But these weren't random points in space. They formed a clear pattern, a network of connected worlds. And at the center of that network was a system that every spacefarer knew saw: Earth's solar system. But that was impossible. 700 years ago, humanity had been a minor interstellar power, at best confined to perhaps a dozen worlds. This map suggested something far grander, an empire spanning dozens of systems with Earth at its heart. Maya sat back, her mind reeling. If this cube was authentic, it represented proof that humanity had once been one of the galaxy's great powers. Not the primitive struggling species that most aliens saw them as today, but architects of a stellar empire that had somehow vanished from history. She was still staring at the holographic star map when her ship's proximity alarms chimed. Maya quickly dismissed the displays and checked her sensors. 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace near the station, sleek, predatory vessels with the distinctive black hulls of Geralt Corporation security. Maya's blood ran cold. Had they somehow detected her investigation, or was this just a coincidence? She activated her ship's passive sensors and eavesdropped on the general communications channels. What she heard confirmed her worst fears. Immediate sweep of all research facilities. The artifact is to be secured and transferred to Geralt Prime. Any unauthorized personnel found in proximity are to be detained for questioning. Maya cursed under her breath. Somehow, Geralt had discovered the cube's true nature. Maybe their own scientists had finally cracked the surface patterns, or maybe they'd intercepted Kale's organization's communications. Either way, her window of opportunity was closing fast. She had 2 choices: abandon the mission and flee, or attempt to steal the cube before Geralt's security forces could secure it. Given what she'd just discovered about the cube's true nature, abandoning it wasn't really an option. Maya began pulling up the station's schematics again, this time focusing on maintenance tunnels and service corridors. If Geralt was sending security teams to secure the research labs, the main corridors would be crawling with armed guards within the hour. But there was another way. 20 minutes later, Maya was crawling through a maintenance shaft barely wide enough for her shoulders, her toolkit strapped to her back, and a small plasma torch in her hand. The shaft ran parallel to the lab's main corridor, with access panels every 50 meters. She'd changed into a maintenance worker's coveralls, easy enough to acquire from the ship's clothing printer, and clipped a forged ID badge to her collar. If anyone stopped her, she'd claim to be responding to a routine systems check. The access panel she needed was 3 sections down from the lab. Maya cut through the retaining bolts with her plasma torch and carefully removed the panel, peering through the opening into the corridor beyond. Empty for now, but she could hear the sound of boots approaching, probably the security team making their sweep. Maya slipped through the opening and quickly replaced the panel, leaving no obvious sign of entry. Then, she activated the electromagnetic seal on her coveralls, a black market modification that would make her nearly invisible to most security scanners, and pressed herself against the wall. The security team rounded the corner moments later, 4 humans in Geralt Corporation uniforms armed with standard pulse rifles. They moved with military precision, checking each lab entrance as they passed. Maya waited until they had moved past, then hurried toward the materials sciences lab. Her cover would only hold up under casual inspection. Once Geralt locked down the station, they'd run intensive scans that would detect her modifications. The lab's emergency access was located behind a service panel, next to the main entrance. Maya had memorized the security codes from the schematics. Geralt used standard encryption for non-critical systems, probably assuming no one would be foolish enough to attempt theft from one of their facilities. The codes worked. Maya slipped into the lab's secondary chamber, a small room adjacent to the main research area, where the gel scientists stored their equipment. Through the connecting window, she could see the cube still sitting alone on its pedestal. The main lab appeared to be empty. The gel scientists had probably been evacuated when the security alert went out. Maya tried the connecting door and found it unlocked. Apparently, internal security hadn't been a major concern when the lab was designed. She moved quickly to the pedestal, her hands steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The cube was heavier than it looked, probably 30 kilograms, but manageable. She lifted it carefully and placed it in the shock-proof container she'd brought in her toolkit. Then, she heard voices in the corridor outside. Complete analysis in progress. Dr. Voss, I need you to verify that the artifact hasn't been tampered with. Maya's heart sank. The Gel scientist was returning with what sounded like Geralt's security personnel. She looked around frantically for another exit, but the lab had only 2 entrances, the main door and the service entrance she'd used. She was trapped. Maya looked at the cube, then at the lab's equipment, and made a desperate decision. If she was going to be caught anyway, she might as well learn something first. She pulled the cube back out of its container and placed it on one of the scanning platforms. The lab's instruments were far more sophisticated than anything she had access to on her ship. If the cube really did contain more than just star maps, the gel technology might be able to detect it. Maya activated the scanning array and held her breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cube began to pulse with a faint, blue-white light. The lab's holofield projectors suddenly activated, filling the air above the cube with a 3-dimensional star map. But this wasn't like the pattern Maya had decoded from the surface etchings. This map showed stellar positions, planetary orbits, and what looked like trade routes and territorial boundaries. And overlaid on the entire display were symbols that Maya recognized with a shock of disbelief. They were ancient human script, not the simplified standard that humanity used today, but the complex writing system of the old Earth civilizations. Maya stared in wonder as the display shifted and changed, showing the evolution of human expansion across the galaxy. She watched as the network of human worlds grew from a handful of colonies to a sprawling empire that encompassed most of the galaxy's inner rim. The dates were clearly marked, showing a timeline that began over 800 years ago and ended 700 years ago in a single catastrophic event that the display called the Silence. Fascinating, isn't it? Maya spun around to find Dr. Voss, standing in the lab's entrance, her translucent form rippling with what Maya now realized were colors of amazement rather than hostility. Dr. Voss, I can explain. No need, Voss interrupted, moving closer to the holographic display. I've been watching from the corridor for the past 5 minutes. This is extraordinary. I've been studying this artifact for weeks and it never responded to our bioelectric interfaces. It responds to human DNA, Maya said, understanding beginning to dawn. That's why you couldn't activate it. It was designed specifically for human hands. Voss studied the rotating star map, with what could only be described as awe. Your species built this map 700 years ago, but according to our historical records, humans were barely spacefaring at that time. A few scattered colonies, nothing more. Our historical records, Maya corrected. What if our history is wrong? What if the collapse wasn't just internal strife and plagues, but something that deliberately erased human civilization from galactic memory. Before Voss could respond, the lab's doors burst open, and 4 Geralt security officers stormed in pulse rifles raised. "Step away from the artifact," the lead officer commanded. "You're under arrest for industrial espionage and theft of corporate property." Maya raised her hands, but kept her body between the guards and the cube. "This isn't corporate property. It's a human artifact, and it proves that—" "It proves nothing," the officer interrupted. "Geralt Corporation has salvage rights to all artifacts recovered in this sector. The cube is coming with us." "You can't destroy this," Maya protested. "Do you see what it's showing? This is evidence of human civilization that predates current galactic history." The officer's expression didn't change. "That's not my concern. Dr. Voss, please deactivate the display so we can remove the artifact." Voss hesitated, her colors shifting rapidly. Maya could see the conflict playing out across her bioluminescent form. Finally, Voss spoke. "I'm afraid I can't do that." "Excuse me." "The artifact is clearly responding to the human genetic signature. As the lead scientist on this project, I must insist that Ms. Chen remain present for any further testing. Removing her would compromise the integrity of our research." The security officer's face darkened. "Doctor, you're interfering with a corporate security operation." "And you're interfering with scientific research," Voss replied calmly. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Ethics Council regarding corporate overreach in scientific discovery." Maya stared at Voss in amazement. The gel scientist was risking her career to protect the artifact. The standoff was broken by the sound of alarms echoing throughout the station. The lights flickered, and Maya felt a subtle vibration through the deck, the unmistakable sign of ships docking under combat conditions. "Sir," one of the security officers spoke into his communicator. "We have a situation in Lab 15. The response was immediate and sharp. Abort current operation. All security personnel to Docking Bay 47 immediately. We have unauthorized ships attempting to board." The lead officer looked frustrated, but nodded to his team. "You're both staying here until we can sort this out," he told Maya and Voss. "Touch nothing." The security team rushed out, leaving Maya and Voss alone with the still active holographic display. "Why?" Maya asked. "Why did you help me?" Voss's colors shifted to what Maya interpreted as complex emotions: curiosity, excitement, and perhaps a touch of regret. "Because in all my years of studying ancient technology, I've never seen anything like this. The mathematics involved in creating this display. It suggests your ancestors possessed knowledge that we're only beginning to rediscover." Maya looked back at the holographic star map, now showing what appeared to be the final years of the human empire. "They called themselves the Architects," she murmured, reading the ancient script. "Not emperors or conquerors. Architects." "Architects of what?" Maya manipulated the display, zooming in on the central systems. "Everything. Look at this. They didn't just conquer worlds, they redesigned them. Atmospheric processors, gravity manipulation, stellar engineering." She paused as another set of symbols appeared. "And they built something in the galactic core, something called the Bridge." Before Voss could ask what that meant, the lab doors opened again. But instead of Geralt security, a tall figure in gray strode in, followed by 2 humans in military gear. "Kale," Maya exclaimed. "Ms. Trent, I apologize for the delay, but it took longer than expected to convince the station's security chief to grant us passage." Kale looked at the holographic display, and his expression became one of wonder. "Is this what I think it is?" "It's a map of human space," Maya said. 700 years ago, humanity controlled dozens of star systems. We weren't the minor power the history books claim. We were one of the galaxy's great civilizations." Kale nodded slowly. "The Titan artifacts. We always suspected, but this is proof." Dr. Voss cleared her throat. "Excuse me, but who exactly are you?" "General Kale Vorn, retired," Kale said with a slight bow. "And you must be Dr. Voss. Your reputation precedes you." General Voss's colors shifted to suspicion. This is beginning to feel less like scientific research and more like a military operation. Scientific research can have military implications, Kale replied diplomatically, especially when it concerns the true history of galactic civilization. Maya was studying the display more closely, focusing on the timestamp, showing when the human empire had ended. Kyle, look at this. The silence. It wasn't a gradual collapse. It happened in a matter of months across the entire network simultaneously. What could cause something like that? Voss asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her suspicion. A coordinated attack, Kale said grimly. Or perhaps... He paused, considering. Maya, can you access records from the final period? Maya manipulated the interface and the display shifted to show detailed logs from the Empire's last days. The ancient human text scrolled past too quickly for her to read, but the cube seemed to respond to her desire for understanding, providing translated highlights. What she read made her blood run cold. They destroyed themselves, Maya whispered. When they realized they couldn't prevent the invasion, they triggered something called the Silence Protocol. It erased their technology, their records, their entire infrastructure. They chose to fade into history, rather than let their knowledge fall into enemy hands. Enemy hands, Voss pressed. What enemy? Maya continued reading, her face growing pale. The Devourers, a machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim. The architects discovered them building a vast fleet preparing to consume all organic life in the galaxy. The human empire bought time for other species by drawing the Devourers' attention, then enacted the silence to prevent their technology from being turned against the galaxy. The lab fell silent, except for the hum of the cube's projectors. Finally, Kale spoke. Maya, does it say what happened to the Devourers? Maya searched through the final entries. The last records are unclear. There's mention of a final battle at something called the Bridge, then nothing. Either the Devourers were stopped or they're still out there waiting. This is impossible, Voss said, her colors flickering rapidly. Our histories make no mention of any such threat. Surely some record would have survived. Unless the Silence Protocol was designed to erase all records, Maya replied. Not just human ones, but any mention of the Devourers themselves. Think about it. If you were facing an enemy that could corrupt any technology it encountered, wouldn't you want to make sure future generations couldn't accidentally stumble across information that might summon them back? Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding again. But this time, they were different, not security alerts, but evacuation warnings. All personnel to emergency stations, a voice announced over the station's intercom. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels approaching from the galactic rim. All ships prepare for immediate departure. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at the cube's display, then at the others. It can't be a coincidence. Kale was already moving. We need to leave now. Maya, can you shut down the display? I'm not sure. It seems to be responding to my genetic signature, but I don't know how to... She was interrupted by Voss. Don't shut it down. Transfer it. What? The data. We can use the station's quantum storage banks to copy everything. If this is truly the historical record of humanity's lost empire, it deserves to be preserved. Do it, Kale ordered, but quickly. Voss moved to the lab's control panel, her crystalline fingers interfacing directly with the station's computer systems. Light raced through her body as she worked uploading the cube's entire contents to the station's memory banks. Transfer complete, she announced. But General Vorn, I should point out that Geralt Corporation will have access to these files. That's a problem for another day, Kale replied. Right now, we need to focus on surviving whatever's coming from the rim. Maya carefully lifted the cube, noting that its glow was beginning to fade, now that the transfer was complete. She placed it back in her shock-proof container and sealed it shut. Dr. Voss, she said, you should come with us. If Geralt Corporation gets their hands on this data, they'll suppress it, Voss finished. Yes, I've reached the same conclusion. She paused, her colors shifting to what Maya recognized as determination. I'll gather my research notes and meet you at your ship. Docking bay, Maya told her. We launch in 10 minutes. Voss nodded and hurried out of the lab. Kale gestured for Maya to follow, but she paused at the door, looking back at the empty pedestal where the cube had sat. Everything all right? Kale asked. I keep thinking about what this means, Maya said. If humanity was once this powerful, if we built an empire that spanned the galaxy, why are we still pretending to be a minor species? Why haven't we tried to reclaim our heritage? Perhaps, Kyle said quietly, because some secrets are kept secret for good reasons. Come on. They made their way through the station's corridors, which were now filled with panicking civilians and hurried crew members. Maya could see ships departing through the observation windows, their engines flaring as they fled toward hyperspace jump points. They reached Docking Bay 23 to find Voss already there, carrying a small case of data storage devices. Her colors were shifting rapidly between excitement and fear. The approaching ships, she said without preamble. I accessed the station's sensor data. They're not matching any known configuration in our databases. Could they be the Devourers? Maya asked, fear making her voice tight. I don't know, but they're large. Larger than anything in current galactic fleets. Kale was already powering up the ship's engines. Speculation can wait until we're safely in hyperspace. Maya, Voss, get aboard. We're leaving now. The ship lifted off as the last airlock sealed, rising up through the station's departure corridor toward the open space beyond. Maya strapped herself into the co-pilot seat and brought up the sensor display. What she saw made her heart race. Emerging from the darkness beyond the station were shapes that defied easy description. They were ships clearly artificial, but their design was unlike anything in galactic civilization. Where most vessels were built along clean geometric lines, these appeared almost organic with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with faint light. How many? Kale asked, concentrating on their escape vector. 15. No 20. More are appearing on long-range sensors. Maya looked at the tactical display. Kale, they're massive. The smallest one is the size of a battlecruiser. Weapon signatures. Maya checked the scanner readouts. Unknown energy patterns. But the power levels. She paused, running the numbers again. They're reading orders of magnitude higher than anything in our databases. Behind them, Obsidian Reach was erupting in panic. Ships fled in every direction, some colliding in their haste to escape. The station's defensive weapons, formidable arrays designed to deter pirates and raiders, powered up and targeted the approaching vessels. They're going to fire, Voss announced, monitoring the communication channels. Maya watched the tactical display as the station's plasma cannons and torpedo launchers opened fire. The weapons, capable of destroying a heavy cruiser, struck the lead unknown vessel directly, and had no effect whatsoever. The energy discharge simply dissipated against the ship's hull like raindrops on glass. Impossible, Maya breathed. The unknown ships didn't return fire. Instead, they simply continued their approach, moving with a strange fluid grace that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. As they drew closer, details became visible on the sensors. The ship's hulls were smooth and dark, almost absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were no visible weapons ports, no engine exhausts, nothing that identified them as the products of any known technology. But what made Maya's blood run cold was something else entirely. Kyle, she said quietly, I'm picking up electromagnetic signatures from those ships. They're trying to interface with every electronic system in the area. Like a virus. Exactly like a virus. They're probing our computers, our communications arrays, everything. It's the same technique described in the Cube's records, the way the Devourers corrupted technology. Kale's hands tightened on the ship's controls. How long until we can jump to hyperspace? 3 minutes, Maya replied, watching the jump computer calculate their escape vector. General Voss spoke up from her station. I'm detecting massive power buildups in the unknown vessels. Whatever they're planning to do, it's going to happen soon. Maya focused on her instruments, trying to block out the growing panic in the evacuation fleet around them. Ships were jumping to hyperspace as quickly as their navigational computers would allow, but many were still trapped by the time required to calculate safe routes. 2 minutes to jump, she announced. Then the unknown ships attacked. But it wasn't the devastating barrage of energy weapons Maya had expected. Instead, the ships released clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust, tiny particles that spread out like glittering nebulae in the vacuum of space. The dust reached the nearest fleeing ships, and something horrifying happened. The vessels simply stopped. Their engines cut out, their lights died, and they began drifting helplessly. "The particles are interfacing with their systems," Voss reported, her voice filled with growing alarm. "It's some kind of nanoscale technology designed to shut down electronic systems from the inside." "Are they destroying the ships?" Maya asked. "No, they're just disabling them, leaving them intact but powerless." Maya felt a chill run through her. The ships weren't being destroyed. They were being captured. And if the historical records were accurate, the crews aboard those vessels were probably being studied, cataloged, prepared for whatever use the Devourers had in mind. 30 seconds to jump," she announced. But even as she spoke, Maya could see more clouds of the metallic particles spreading outward from the unknown ships, moving faster than should have been possible. They were going to reach Kale's ship before the jump was complete. "Kyle, we're not going to make it," she said. "Yes, we are." Kale's voice was grim but determined. "Maya Voss, I need you to shut down all non-essential systems. Everything except life support and the hyperdrive. That will leave us defenseless. It will also leave us invisible to whatever those particles are looking for. Do it now." Maya and Voss worked frantically, powering down sensors, communication arrays, even the ship's internal gravity generators. The cabin descended into darkness, except for the faint glow of the jump computer. 10 seconds, Maya whispered. Through the viewport, she could see the particle cloud approaching a glittering wave of destruction that had already claimed a dozen ships. In the distance, Obsidian Reach was going dark, section by section, as the nanoscale invaders penetrated its systems. "Jump!" Maya shouted. The universe twisted around them as the hyperdrive engaged, pulling them out of normal space and into the compressed dimension of faster-than-light travel. Maya felt the familiar sensation of displacement, followed by the strange calm that always accompanied hyperspace journeys. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Maya slowly began bringing systems back online, starting with the sensors. "Did we make it?" Voss asked. Maya checked their position against galactic coordinates. "We're in hyperspace, heading for the Sanctuary system. ETA 6 hours. Kale finally released his grip on the controls and slumped back in his pilot's chair. "What did we just see back there?" "If the records are accurate," Maya said quietly, "we just witnessed the return of the Devourers." "But that's impossible," Voss protested. "The cube's data showed them being defeated 700 years ago." "The records weren't clear about their defeat," Maya corrected. "Only that they were stopped at something called the bridge. Maybe they were just delayed, not destroyed." Kale stood up and began pacing the small cabin. "If that's true, then the galaxy is facing the same threat that forced humanity to destroy its own empire. The question is, what do we do about it?" Maya looked at the sealed container holding the cube. Inside was the accumulated knowledge of humanity's greatest civilization, including their final battle against an enemy that had returned to finish what it started. "We do what the architects couldn't," she said finally. "We find a way to stop them permanently." "How?" Voss asked. "According to your records, humanity had technology far beyond anything available today, and they still couldn't defeat the Devourers directly." "No," Maya agreed. "But they did something else. They built the bridge. And if we can find it, maybe we can learn how they managed to stop the Devourers for 700 years. Kale nodded slowly. "The cube contained star maps. Did you see any reference to the bridge's location?" Maya was already pulling up the data they'd copied from the artifact. The holographic display filled the cabin once again, showing the network of human worlds as they'd existed 7 centuries ago. She searched through the records looking for any mention of the bridge project. Here, she said, highlighting a set of coordinates near the galactic core. Project Bridge, initiated by the Architect Council in the final year of the war. It was built at the intersection of several hyperspace routes in a system called Threshold. I know that system, Voss said, her colors brightening with recognition. It's in the dead zone where hyperspace travel is impossible due to gravitational anomalies. No one's been able to approach it in centuries. Maybe that's the point, Maya suggested. What better place to hide something than in a region of space where no one can use their technology? Kale returned to the pilot station and began plotting a new course. It's a 2-week journey to the edge of the dead zone, assuming we don't run into any devourer ships along the way. General Voss said hesitantly, I should point out that I'm a research scientist, not an explorer. I don't have authorization to leave my assigned posting. Doctor, Kale replied, I don't think anyone's worried about expired research permits right now. If those ships start spreading throughout the galaxy, your research station won't exist to fire you. Maya looked at the sensor readings, showing their path through hyperspace. Behind them, the galaxy was facing its greatest threat in 700 years. Ahead lay answers that might save civilization itself. And, in her sealed container, the last testimony of humanity's greatest achievement waited to guide them. Kyle, she said, I need to ask you something. How did you know about the attack on the station? You arrived just in time to extract us. Kale's expression grew thoughtful. We've been monitoring deep space sensor arrays for months, looking for signs of unusual activity beyond the galactic rim. When we detected the approaching ships, we realized they were heading for Obsidian Reach. The timing of our extraction was fortunate but not accidental. You knew this was going to happen. We suspected. The Titan artifacts weren't the only pieces of ancient human technology we've recovered. There have been dozens of fragments over the years, all containing warnings about something from beyond the rim. The Silence Protocol wasn't just about hiding human technology. It was about making sure future generations would remember when the threat returned. Maya felt a chill run through her. So the whole thing, hiring me to retrieve the cube, the dramatic extraction, it was all planned. Not planned exactly, but prepared for. Maya, your species has been unconsciously preparing for this moment for 700 years. The cube was one of many breadcrumbs left by the architects designed to lead the right people to the right information at the right time. Before Maya could respond, the ship's alarms chimed softly. Voss checked her station and looked up with concern. We're receiving a galactic emergency broadcast, she announced. All ships, all stations. It's coming from the Galactic Council. Put it through, Kale ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the council chamber on Centralis Prime, the political heart of galactic civilization. The image was distorted with interference, but Maya could make out the forms of representatives from dozens of species, all looking toward a central podium where a figure in the robes of the council chancellor stood. Do. Confirmed attacks on 17 systems along the outer rim, the chancellor was saying. The unknown vessels appear to be using technology that can disable all electronic systems within a given area. All civilian traffic is advised to remain in inter-system space until further notice. The image flickered, showing brief shots of the destruction. Maya saw more ships like the ones that had attacked Obsidian Reach, their dark hulls moving through space with that same uncanny grace. But there were larger vessels too, things the size of small moons that seemed to absorb light itself. The Galactic Defense Force has been placed on highest alert, the Chancellor continued. However, conventional weapons appear to have limited effectiveness against these invaders. We are therefore calling upon all worlds to share any information that might shed light on the nature of this threat. The transmission cut to another view, this one showing what appeared to be a massive spherical structure in deep space, surrounded by a cloud of debris that Maya realized with horror had once been a fleet of defense ships. That thing is the size of a small planet, Voss whispered. No. A Devourer world ship, Maya said, reading from the cube's records. The architects faced dozens of them in the final war. Each one carries millions of devourer units, self-replicating machines designed to consume and convert all matter and energy they encounter. The transmission continued with more reports of attacks of worlds going dark, of entire systems falling silent. The devourers weren't just returning. They were returning in greater numbers than before, and with 7 centuries to improve their technology. The Galactic Council has authorized the formation of an emergency coalition, the Chancellor announced. All species, all worlds, all factions are called upon to unite against this common threat. We will be sharing intelligence and resources regardless of previous political boundaries. The transmission ended, leaving the cabin in stunned silence. "It's happening," Maya said quietly. "The second Devourer War has begun. And this time," Kale added grimly, "humanity can't save the galaxy by sacrificing itself. We're too few, too weak, too scattered." "Then we find another way," Maya said firmly. "The bridge. Whatever the architects built there, it held the Devourers back for 700 years. If we can reactivate it, strengthen it." "Assuming it still exists," Voss pointed out. 7 centuries is a long time. And if it's in the dead zone, maintaining it would have been impossible. Maya pulled up the star maps again, focusing on the area around the threshold system. According to these records, the bridge wasn't just a single structure. It was a network of installations throughout the system, all working together to create some kind of barrier or trap. She enhanced the display, showing the details of the bridge project. "Look at this. It wasn't just a weapon. It was described as a causality engine, something that could manipulate the flow of cause and effect itself." "That's impossible," Voss said. "Even the most advanced civilizations can't manipulate causality." "Maybe not directly. But what if you could create a region of space where time flowed differently, where cause preceded effect, or where the normal rules of physics didn't apply? The dead zone already shows gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist according to standard models." Kale was studying the tactical information in the cube's database. "The final battle," he said. "The records show the Devourers committed their entire force to attacking the bridge. Whatever happened there, it wasn't just a military victory. It was something that fundamentally changed the nature of that region of space." Maya felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together in her mind. What if the architects didn't defeat the Devourers? What if they trapped them, created a pocket of space-time where the Devourer fleet is caught, in an endless loop unable to escape, or age, or die? "And now," Voss said, understanding, dawning in her voice, "they've finally found a way out." The ship continued through hyperspace, carrying its small crew toward a confrontation that would decide the fate of galactic civilization. Maya stared at the holographic records floating around her, the testament of a species that had chosen to fade into history, rather than let their knowledge fall into enemy hands. "There's something else," she said after a long moment. The cube didn't just contain military records. There were cultural files, technological blueprints, even personal messages from the final days of the Empire. She manipulated the display to show a new section of data. The architects didn't just disappear. They left instructions, plans for rebuilding, for returning, for reclaiming their lost empire when the time was right. "You're saying they intended for humanity to rediscover all of this?" Kyle asked. "I'm saying they built their entire silence protocol around the idea that their descendants would one day need the truth. Every Titan artifact, every hidden cache of technology, every mysterious ruin throughout human space. They're all part of the same system, breadcrumbs leading back to the full story." Maya paused, a new realization hitting her. "Kale, how many human worlds are there in the galaxy today?" "Maybe 50 if you count the independent colonies." According to these records, there were 300 human worlds at the height of the Empire. That means there are 250 planets out there, with hidden human installations waiting to be rediscovered. "Ancient weapons caches," Voss suggested. "Among other things. But also, manufacturing facilities, research stations possibly even store genetic material for recreating lost technologies." Maya's mind was racing. The architects didn't just leave us a warning about the devourers. They left us the tools to fight them. The rest of the journey passed in intensive study. Maya, Kale, and Voss worked in shifts cataloging the contents of the cube and cross-referencing them with modern galactic charts. What they found painted a picture of incredible foresight and planning. The human empire hadn't collapsed randomly. The architects had systematically dismantled their own civilization, hiding the most important pieces in locations that would only be accessible when humanity was ready to reclaim them. The cube contained detailed instructions for finding these caches, along with the genetic locks and security protocols needed to access them. "It's elegant," Voss admitted, as she studied the technological specifications. They created a distributed system where no single point of failure could compromise the whole thing. Even if the devourers found some of the hidden facilities, the majority would remain secure. But why wait? Maya wondered. Why let humanity struggle in ignorance for 7 centuries? Why not leave clearer instructions for rebuilding? Kale looked up from the tactical displays he'd been reviewing. Because they were afraid of what they'd created. Look at these weapon specifications. Matter converters, reality warpers, devices that could reshape entire solar systems. In the wrong hands, this technology could be as dangerous as the devourers themselves. So they created a test, Maya said, understanding. The cube, the artifacts, the hidden caches, they're all designed to reveal themselves only to people who show the right combination of curiosity, courage, and wisdom. And timing, Voss added. The security protocols are key to activate in response to specific galactic conditions. The return of the Devourers was always intended to be the trigger. As their ship approached the edge of the dead zone, Maya felt the weight of history pressing down on her. Somewhere ahead, buried in a region of space that defied exploration, lay the key to defeating an enemy that had already begun consuming the galaxy's outer worlds. But first, they had to survive the journey to find it. The ship dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates Maya had calculated, and immediately all their instruments went haywire. The dead zone lived up to its name. Sensors showed wildly contradictory readings, gravitational forces pulled in impossible directions, and the very fabric of space seemed to twist and bend around them. Navigation is useless. Kale reported fighting to keep the ship on course. Hyperspace is completely unstable here. We're on conventional drives from now on. How long to reach the threshold system? Maya asked. At current speed, assuming we don't get torn apart by tidal forces, about 6 days. Maya looked at the sensor displays, which showed nothing but chaos and contradiction. Somewhere in this maelstrom of warped space-time, the architects had built their final weapon. And somewhere else, an ancient enemy was breaking free from a prison that had held them for 7 centuries. The race to save the galaxy had begun. As they plunged deeper into the dead zone, their small ship carrying the last hope of countless worlds, Maya couldn't help but wonder if they were already too late. But one thing was certain. They would find the bridge, or die trying. Because failure wasn't just personal disappointment. Failure meant the end of everything. The Devourers had returned, and only the lost secrets of humanity's greatest civilization could stop them now.